What would you do if the person you loved most seemed too busy for you? What would you think if your own mother cared more about her work than about you? For a long time, I asked myself these questions. My name is Anna Müller, and I grew up in Hamburg, Germany. This is the story of how I thought my mother did not love me, and how I later discovered the truth about her silent sacrifice. My mother's name is Dr. Katharina Müller. She was a respected doctor in the university hospital. People often spoke about her with admiration. They said she was smart, strong, and kind to her patients. But to me, when I was young, she was simply the woman who was never home on time. I often sat alone at the dinner table, looking at the empty chair across from me. I counted the minutes, waiting to hear the sound of her key in the door. Sometimes I ate alone and went to bed without seeing her face. I thought she loved her work more than she loved me. Before we continue, I would love to know your thoughts. Did you ever feel that your parents were too busy for you? Please write your story in the comments, and if you are listening now, do not forget to subscribe and share this video. When I was a child, I believed love meant being together. I wanted my mother to walk me to school, to clap for me when I was in a play, and to sit by my bed when I could not sleep. But most of the time, she came home late. Her face looked tired, her shoulders were heavy, and her hands smelled of hospital soap. I thought she cared more about strangers than about her daughter. I was blind to the small signs of love that she gave me every day. One winter morning, I asked her for a new red coat. All the girls in my class had new clothes, and I felt embarrassed in my old jacket. My mother looked at the price in the shop and shook her head. She said softly, "Not this month, Anna." I cried in anger. I shouted that she did not care about me. I said she cared only about her job. 1 week later, I found the red coat on my bed. I wore it proudly, smiling in front of my friends, but I did not see that my mother wore her old jacket, with holes in the pockets, through the rest of that cold winter. Years later, I learned that she had sacrificed her own comfort so I could have that coat. The memory still burns in my heart. Another time was sarcasm. When I was 12, I wanted to continue my piano lessons. The teacher asked for the monthly fee. I was afraid to tell my mother because I knew it was expensive. But when I asked her, she gave me the money without a word. That evening, I heard her on the phone with the hospital. She asked for more night shifts. At that time, I only thought she was busy again. I did not realize that my piano music was paid for with her tired eyes and sleepless nights. When I was a teenager, the distance between us grew bigger. I became quick to anger. I thought she did not understand me, stopped telling her about my problems. One evening, we had a performance at school. I played a small part in a theater play. I searched the crowd for her face, but could not find her. My heart broke. I thought she had forgotten me again. When the play finished, I walked backstage with tears in my eyes. Then I saw her in the corner. She was wearing her hospital uniform under her winter coat. Her eyes were red with tiredness, but she smiled and waved. Later I learned that she had left a patient in the care of another doctor, rushed through the city on the tram, and arrived late. At the time, I turned away from her, angry that she had missed the beginning. Today, when I remember that moment, I see only her effort and her sacrifice to be there at all. During those years, my room was full of angry thoughts. I wrote in my diary that my mother did not love me. I compared her with the mothers of my friends. They baked cakes, helped with school projects, and waited outside the school gate. I felt jealous. I never told anyone about my mother's long nights at the hospital, or how she sometimes fell asleep at the kitchen table while reading patient notes. To me, that was not love. To me, it was absence. There was one night during my final exams when I studied until midnight. My head was heavy and I felt sick with worry. I heard the front door open. My mother came in quietly. I thought she would tell me to stop studying and go to bed. Instead, she warmed milk, added cocoa, and placed the cup beside me. She did not speak. She only touched my hair lightly before walking to her room. I drank the hot chocolate slowly, feeling safe for the first time that night. At the time, I enjoyed it, but did not understand. Only later did I realize she had made it after 12 hours in the hospital. On my 18th birthday, she promised to be home for dinner. I set the table and waited. The food grew cold. The candles burned low. She did not arrive until late evening. I was angry, but I said nothing. She kissed my forehead and gave me a small box. Inside was a necklace with my initials. I thought it was not special. Only many years later, I discovered that she had bought it with the money she had planned to use for new glasses. She chose my gift instead of her own need. Back then, I refused to see the truth. I only saw a busy woman in a white coat, often absent, sometimes silent, always tired. I did not know that behind her silence was a love stronger than words. I did not know that every night shift, every tired step, every missed dinner was part of her sacrifice for me. I was blind because I measured love in the wrong way. When I look back now, I feel pain and also gratitude. Pain because I wasted so many years in anger. Gratitude because I now understand that her love was always there, hidden in the shadows of her hard work. My mother gave me more than I ever knew. When I entered university, my relationship with my mother changed again. I moved to another city, Leipzig, to study literature. At first, I felt free. I thought I was finally away from her shadow, away from her questions, away from the constant reminder that she was too busy for me. I told myself that I would build a life on my own, without depending on her. But even as I tried to push her away, she was always there, quietly in the background of my new life. She called me every evening during my first weeks in Leipzig. I often answered with a short voice. I told her that I was busy with friends, or busy with classes, or busy with homework. She never complained. She only said, "I just wanted to hear your voice, Anna." At the time, I thought she was trying to control me. I rolled my eyes and ended the calls quickly. Now I understand that those calls were her way of holding me close. When I was far away, life at university was exciting. I met new people. I went to parties. I studied late at night in the library, but in quiet moments when the noise of the city stopped, I often felt lonely. I sometimes wished that I could call her and hear her soft voice, but pride kept me silent. I did not want to admit that I missed her. I had wanted independence for so long, and now that I had it, I did not know what to do with the emptiness it left inside me. During my second year, I became sick with a high fever. I stayed in my small student room, too weak to get up. My friends were busy with their own lives. Nobody came to check on me. I felt miserable. Then, in the middle of the night, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened it, my mother was standing there with a bag of medicine and homemade soup. She had taken the late train from Hamburg after finishing her hospital shift. She looked pale and exhausted, but she smiled and said, "I could not sleep knowing you were sick." She stayed with me for 2 days, cooking, cleaning, and sitting by my bed. I remember her hand on my forehead, cool and steady, giving me more comfort than any medicine. When she left, I cried alone. It was the first time I saw clearly how much she loved me. Still, my young heart was foolish. After I recovered, I went back to my normal life. I forgot quickly about her long journey in the night, her tired eyes, and her soup that tasted of home. I wanted to be free again. I thought freedom meant forgetting the past. I did not realize that freedom without love is only emptiness. In my 3rd year, I found my first job in a bookstore. I was proud to earn my own money. With my first paycheck, I bought a small silver bracelet for my mother. When I gave it to her during a weekend visit, I expected her to laugh or say it was unnecessary. Instead, I saw tears in her eyes. She hugged me tightly, longer than ever before. For the first time, I felt that I had given something back to her. That moment stayed with me, but even then, I did not yet understand the full weight of her sacrifice. There were still times when I judged her harshly. Once, during a holiday, she came to visit me in Leipzig. We planned to go to a Christmas market together. I imagined walking with her, drinking hot chocolate, and looking at the lights. But she arrived late, as usual, because of her work at the hospital. I was angry and said she never kept her promises. Her face became quiet. She did not defend herself. She only said, "I am sorry, Anna." That night, I stayed in my room while she sat alone in the guest bed. Later, I learned that before taking the train, she had stayed late with a patient who had no family. She had chosen compassion over time with her daughter, and at the time I could not forgive her. Now I know it was both love for her patient and love for me, because she never wanted me to see her leave someone helpless. After finishing my studies, I returned to Hamburg and began working as a teacher in a local school. By then, my mother was older, her hair was turning gray, and her movements were slower. She still worked long hours, but I noticed her hands sometimes shook when she lifted heavy objects. She did not speak of her pain, but I could see it in the way she leaned against the table. When she thought no one was looking, I began to feel a deep guilt. All those years, I had judged her as cold, distant, and absent. But now I started to see the truth. She had given me everything, and I had given her so little in return. One evening, after work, I found her sitting in the living room. She was holding an old photo of me as a child. In the picture, I was wearing the red coat she had bought for me so many years ago. She was smiling, but her eyes looked tired even in that memory. She did not notice me at first. She was lost in her thoughts. When she finally looked up, she smiled and said, "You are my light, Anna." My throat closed, and I could not answer. I wanted to say I was sorry for all the times I had been unkind, for all the times I had pushed her away, but the words stayed inside me. As the months passed, I began to notice more of her silent ways of loving. She still cooked my favorite meals, even when she came home late. She still washed my clothes when I visited, even though I was an adult. She still waited at the door when I left, standing there until I disappeared from sight. I began to realize that love is not always spoken. Love can be waiting in silence, standing in the cold, or working through the night. The real turning point came one winter when I found an old box in her wardrobe. Inside were letters, bills, and receipts from many years. I discovered notes from the bank that showed how she had delayed buying things for herself so she could pay for my piano lessons, my school trips, and even the coat I had wanted so much. I also found a letter from her, old university. It said she had once been offered a chance to study abroad in France, but she had refused because she was already pregnant with me. Reading those papers felt like opening a hidden book of her life. For the first time, I understood how many dreams she had left behind so that I could follow mine. I closed the box and sat in silence. Tears filled my eyes. I thought of all the times I had told her she did not care, all the nights I had turned my back on her, all the words I had thrown in anger. Yet she never gave up on me. She never stopped loving me. Her love had not been loud or soft with words. It had been steady, patient, and strong, like the roots of a tree that grow deep underground, invisible but holding everything together. That night, I sat with her at the kitchen table. She looked tired, as always, but she smiled when she saw me. For the first time in many years, I held her hand and did not let go. I whispered, "Thank you, Mama." She looked surprised, then she smiled again, even softer this time. She did not ask why I said it. She did not need to know. She had waited my whole life to hear those words. As the years passed, my mother grew older. Her hair turned silver, and her steps became slower. She no longer walked quickly through the house. Instead, she moved carefully, holding the walls for support. But even as her body grew weaker, her heart seemed just as strong as before. She still asked me every morning, "Did you sleep well?" She still waited for me when I came home from work. She still cooked meals, even when her hands shook while cutting vegetables. I began to notice how much time had gone by. I remembered her as the strong doctor, always walking fast in the hospital corridors, always carrying heavy files, always ready to help everyone. Now, when I looked at her, I saw a woman who had given all her strength to her work and her family. She never spoke about her sacrifices. She never told me how tired she was. She simply continued, as if her life had only one purpose: to give. I often sat with her in the evenings. She liked to drink tea and look through old photo albums. She pointed at the pictures of me as a child, laughing in the garden, holding toys, or wearing the red coat that she had once bought. She smiled as she remembered those days, but sometimes I saw a shadow in her eyes. I wondered if she thought of the dreams she had given up, the travels she had never made, the books she had never written, the rest she had never taken. There were moments when I wanted to ask her about her own youth. I wanted to know what she had dreamed about as a girl in Germany. Did she want to travel the world? Did she want to paint, to dance, to sing, to live a different life? But every time I tried, she turned the conversation back to me. She asked about my work, my students, my health, my friends. It was as if she had learned to erase her own story and replace it with mine. I began to feel a deep regret. I thought of my teenage years when I had shouted at her for being late. I thought of my university days when I had ended her calls quickly, not wanting to listen. I thought of my 18th birthday when I had judged her gift as too simple. Each memory returned to me like a heavy stone, pressing on my chest. I realized I could never take back those words, those moments of cold silence, those times when I had hurt her. But she never once mentioned them. She never reminded me of my mistakes. She never asked for an apology. Instead, she continued to love me in her quiet way, as if her memory had no place for pain. Her heart forgave without being asked. That, I realized, was the greatest power of her love. One winter, she became very sick with pneumonia. She was weak and stayed in bed for days. I stayed by her side in the hospital, watching her breathe heavily, watching her chest rise and fall. For the first time in my life, I saw her not as a doctor, but as a patient. I saw her fragile body, the lines of age on her face, the way her hands searched for mine in the dark. It was then that I fully understood how much she had given for me. She had fought sickness, pain, and loneliness, but she had never complained. She had carried all of it silently so I could live without fear. When she finally recovered, I promised myself something. I promised that I would spend more time with her. I promised I would never again judge her love by her presence at the table or by the number of times she called. I promised that I would love her with the same quiet strength that she had shown me. From then on, I began to visit her every evening after work. We cooked together, laughed together, and sometimes sat in silence, simply enjoying the comfort of being in the same room. I listened to her stories, even when she repeated them. I watched her care for her small garden outside the apartment, smiling when the flowers grew. I helped her water them, and she told me she was proud that I finally joined her in the things she loved. Sometimes, when she thought I was not looking, she stared at me with the same expression she had when I was a child. It was a look full of love and pride, as if she still saw me as her little girl. It made me realize that a mother's love does not change with time. It does not fade when children grow older. It stays strong, like the roots of an oak tree, hidden but unshakable. Now, whenever I look at her, I feel both sadness and peace. Sadness because I know I cannot give her back the years she lost. Peace because I finally understand that her sacrifices were not empty. They were full of meaning, full of love. She gave me education, safety, music, and confidence. She gave me a future. Everything I am today is because of her. Sometimes I sit alone and imagine what life would be like if she had chosen differently. If she had taken the chance to study abroad, maybe she would have become a famous doctor in France. If she had bought herself new clothes instead of my coat, maybe she would have walked through the city with more comfort. If she had lived for herself instead of for me, maybe her life would have been easier. But then I would not be who I am today, and I know she never regretted her choice. Her happiness was always tied to mine. On her 65th birthday, I planned a small surprise. I invited her old friends from the hospital, some of our relatives, and even my old piano teacher. I cooked her favorite meal, baked a cake, and decorated the living room with flowers from her garden. When she walked in and saw everyone, her eyes filled with tears. She hugged me and whispered, "This is more than I ever wanted." In that moment, I felt proud. For once, I gave her something back. Now, as I sit and write these words, my mother is resting in her chair beside the window. She is older, slower, and weaker, but her spirit is still full of love. She looks at me and smiles, and I finally see what I was blind to for so many years. Her love was never absent. It was never cold. It was simply quiet, hidden in sacrifice, silent but stronger than anything else. I no longer measure love by words or by presence. I measure it by actions, by patience, by the sacrifices a person makes without speaking of them. My mother taught me that lesson. She taught me that love is not always in the big gestures. Sometimes it is in the late-night cup of cocoa, the old jacket worn through winter, or the missed train taken to arrive for a school play. Sometimes love is invisible until you grow old enough to see it. Today, I hold her hand more often. I sit with her, listen to her stories, and tell her mine. I tell her how much she means to me. I tell her how grateful I am for everything she has done. She only smiles and says, "That is what mothers do." But I know it is more than that. It is not what every mother does. It is what she chose to do. It is the silent sacrifice that shaped my life. And for that, I will love her forever. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. I would love to know, what do you remember most about your mother's love? Your stories will inspire others who listen here.